Hey, good evening, everybody. Okay. Welcome to the meeting of the Cabinet. I'm Councillor Peray Ahmet, Leader of the Council and chairing the meeting tonight. So for the public record, we have Cabinet members present here in the room, as well as a number of senior officers. Some non-Cabinet members are also present, and additionally, there are officers who will be joining us virtually online. If any virtual attendees wish to speak, they can indicate with the yellow icon, and this will be picked up in the meeting. And this meeting is being live streamed and recorded by the Council for subsequent broadcast via the Council's internet site. So can I ask Cabinet members to introduce themselves, please, and state their portfolio areas, and if any speakers do come forward, if they can also introduce themselves before they speak. But if I can start with Councillor Arkell.
My name is Emily Arkell and I'm the Cabinet Member for Culture and Leisure.
I'm Dana Carlin. I'm the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services.
I'm Ajda Ovek, Cabinet Member for Communities.
Lucia Desneves, Cabinet Member of Health, Social Care and Wellbeing. Emma Chandramani, Cabinet Member for Resident Services and Tech and Inequality.
Ruth Gordon, Cabinet Member for Placemaking and the Local Economy.
Sarah Williams, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Housing and Planning.
And we have apologies from Councillor Brabazon and apologies for lateness from Councillor Hakata. Is there any urgent business tonight?
No items of urgent business, Chair.
Okay, can I ask if any members have declaration of interest to make tonight? Councillor Chanwani.
I would like to declare a personal interest in item 13 in accordance with 6.21 of the Constitution.
Councillor Arkell.
Same as Councillor Chandwani, I'd like to declare a personal interest in item 13 in accordance with 6.21 of the Constitution.
Thank you both. Item 5, which is the notice of intention to conduct business in private. Any representations received in the response to any such representation. So there were no representations received at the agenda publication stage in relation to the exempt items on the agenda tonight. Item 6, which is the minutes. Can Cabinet just confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of July 2024 as a correct record, please? Thank you. Item 7, deputations, petitions, questions. We've received a deputation in accordance with committee standing orders in relation to item 11, which is the housing annual compliance statement. This is put forward by Mr. Paul Burnham, Paul Burnham, and also in attendance is Florence Alloway, I believe. The deputation spokesperson will have 3 minutes in total to address the Cabinet. Cabinet members can then put forward questions to the deputation party, and following this Cabinet member, Councillor Williams will respond to the issues raised in the deputation. So given that we have a deputation for consideration in relation to item 11, and as we've passed usual practice, can I propose that we vary the agenda to take item 11 after item 8 and before item 9, if that's okay? Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, so can I ask the deputation to come forward, please, and make their representations? And just a reminder, Paul, that you have 3 minutes.
Hello, everybody. It's Paul Burnham here. Looking at the housing assurance reports, which says that the fire risk assessments have been done, even though 37% of the follow-up actions were not being logged onto the council system. But it's the poor content of the assessments themselves that we want to talk about. And here are 3 types of failings. First, last year there was a downward lurch in the quality of the FRAs. Suddenly we had assessments with no timescales or action plans, seeking to shift the work away from public oversight and back behind closed doors. Secondly, we saw in the first house fire 4 years ago, with rapid fire spread through an unassessed roof space, how important it is to enter and check all common parts of the building. But still, it doesn't seem to happen. Nothing has been learned from that fire. Third, there has been a misrating of blocks. For example, John Keats House and Newbury House in Wood Green. These blocks each have 6 vertical ribbons of combustible panels up the sides, with an estimated 360 square metres of combustible material in each case, plus defective fire doors. Both the fire doors are flat, the front doors are flats, and the doors in communal corridors, all in 15-storey buildings and each with a single staircase. And yet these 2 blocks were rated at tolerable risk of fire, which means no need to spend any money. This misrating places residents' lives at risk. It was not a mistake. Senior officers know about it and have defended these fire risk assessment outcomes. Okay, so when you come back to us, I'm guessing that you will speak about the intrusive external wall tests. These would be based on the test specification PAS 9980, which takes a risk-based approach and warns us that, quote, for some stakeholders, there is no appetite to consider a risk-based approach, and concern arising from the Grenfell fire has led some stakeholders to believe that the only satisfactory outcome is certainty on the performance of external walls in fire, with 0 risk to life as the principal objective. And then it says the methodology in this PAS cannot be applied when such a view prevails, end quote. In other words, these tests would most likely keep dangerous material on the walls of our homes, especially if your current contractor carries out the assessments. So the recommendation at the end is to give us a break and get the deadbeat panels off of our homes now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Paul. Do any Cabinet members have any questions for Paul? No. Okay, Councillor Williams, you have 3 to 5 minutes to respond, please.
Thanks, Paul. Nice to see you again. I'm glad that you come to, I think, every meeting I ever attend. And thank you for your email today, where you said you responded to an email I sent to other persons, which is an interesting. Normally, we only get responses from people who the email is actually sent to. But anyway, I shall address your issues here. You talk about the 37% of action not logged on the tracker. So just to say, the consolidation list doesn't include actions that have already been closed or those that were duplicate actions from the previous FRAs. There were and are also work streams where a programme is already in place, so the action is closed. In all cases, the action will remain on the FRA itself, and we would be able to evidence the rationale for closure where they are not on our current action tracker. The main recommendation from the audit is in relation to this point, is to move away from spreadsheets, and we're doing so through the implementation of our computerised compliance management system. You would also assert that there are no timescales from remedial actions. So in accordance with PAS 79, the current publicly available British standard for fire risk assessments, all of our FRAs have an action plan. In accordance with clause 19 of the standard, formulation of an action plan, the plans contain information regarding the appropriate effort and urgency associated with the measured recommendation. Through our fire safety policy, we have a scheme of prioritisation. That is the suitable way in which we operate and projects are planned. The standard confirms there is no right or wrong scheme of prioritisation, but whatever scheme is adopted, it needs to be simple to understand, facilitate consistent application, and be relatively unambiguous as far as allocation of priorities is concerned. Therefore, we clearly do have timescales for remedial actions. Our scheme sets out clear timescales through 4 priorities ranging from 24-hour urgent to unlimited, which is recommended, and was like other providers when compared. Your assertion that we have a failure to assess communal parts of blocks. Our approach is in line with clause 19.8 of PAS 79, which states, where relevant, the action plan should recommend matters for further investigation by the duty holder and areas that need to be checked by the duty holder, e.g. where relevant information and access to certain areas were not available at the time of the FRA. All such issues are logged on the FRA as actions that are tracked and followed up through relevant programmes to access and complete further investigations and surveys. Lastly, you assert that failure to identify or assess accurately combustible materials on external walls. Okay. So we've done initial assessments of external walls already. The next step is to do more invasive assessments. It's down to the fire risk assessor to judge where we should do an invasive investigation of wall construction and cladding. The procedure for this is set out under clause 15 of PAS 79 standard under the assessment of fire protection measures. Evidence from our risk assessments will be used to inform our programme of fire risk appraisals for external walls. The contract for this programme is out to procurement and is due to commence early 2025. This follows official procedure under PAS 9980 of the fire risk appraisal of external walls and cladding of flats. And to say that we're not doing anything more generally because we would have to spend money, you have to be reminded that we are spending 37 million over the next 5 years on these remediation works. So it's absolute nonsense to say that we're not and that we're ignoring risk because of that reason.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. So we're going to move on, and then we're going to come back to item 11 after item 8. So item 8 is the matters referred to Cabinet by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and there are no matters from the Scrutiny Committee for this meeting. Item 11, which is the Housing Annual Compliance Assurance Statement. Over to you again, please, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. So every resident deserves a safe and secure home, and maintaining good quality, safe, warm and sustainable council homes is a key priority for this council. The report sets out our progress against the Big 6 safety compliance areas, that is gas, electricity, fire safety, asbestos, Legionella and lifts. One of the key priorities of Haringey Council's Housing Improvement Plan, as approved by this Cabinet in 2023, is to improve our compliance and reporting. The Council has since implemented a range of proactive safety and fire risk assessment programmes for all compliance activities. This is closely monitored through our governance process on a monthly basis. The Council's internal monitoring and compliance board are presented with a key performance indicator report on the Big 6 compliance areas. We also seek out, through Mazars auditors, independent review and assessment of the quality of our reporting and assurance to ensure that it is accurate and robust. This provides assurance to the public and to us that council executives and officers are appropriately managing property-related health and safety risks. One fundamental recommendation made by Mazars is concerning the accuracy and utility of our record keeping. They recommend that the Council move away from the use of spreadsheets in managing and tracking our progress on the Big 6 compliance areas, and I'm pleased to say that this work is already underway. A new digital compliance management system has been procured and is being implemented, with fire and electrical management almost completed. The remaining gas, asbestos, lifts and water safety modules will be completed by the end of December 24. Modernisation of our record keeping is a key part of the current programme of improvement in compliance management, which will also address other recommendations as set out in the Mazars report. Thank you, and it's for you to read the report. I don't know if Jahed or Scott want to add anything on.
I think just to reiterate, when we presented the Housing Improvement Plan last year to Cabinet, one of the things that we committed to was not only will we be internally checking how we're performing against the Big 6, but we'll get external scrutiny on our own performance to validate our own assessment. So what this report does is shares an external audit report confirming the figures that we've been reporting on internally have been validated externally, just to give members the additional oversight and assurance that you may need.
Thank you, Jahed. Do Cabinet members have any questions for Councillor Williams? Councillor Dasnevs.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, really. It's understandable that residents would have concerns about fire safety, given what we now know. I wonder if you could just reassure us verbally here around your conversations with the regulator about our fire safety, the processes we've been through and are going through, and our intentions.
So when we self-referred to the regulator last year, we entered into a voluntary undertaking that was presented to Cabinet last year. Primarily, there's 10 undertakings that we committed as a council to complete. 9 out of the 10 undertakings have now been completed. There's only 1 left, which is due to be completed by December. So I think from a regulator's perspective, they've seen progress by Haringey in the work streams that we've set out that we'll make progress against. But I think more importantly, one of the things that they raised at the time with myself was the level of high risk fire actions that we had in Haringey. At the time when we self-referred, we had just over 4,000. That's now reduced down to 1,000. That 1,000 is expected to be closed off by December, subject to our contractors performing on their end to get that complete.
Thank you, Jared. Any more questions from the Cabinet on this area? No. Okay. Where is he? Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. The report from MASS notes that the percentage fire remedial actions closed in target was only 24%, but there's no reference made to this anywhere else in the report. Could you expand on what this finding means? No, there's 2. The failure to properly log remedial actions brought up by the auditors is quite worrying. Have spot checks since the report brought up any cause for concern?
I think, Jahed, if you can pick that up. I actually didn't hear the second question. Would you mind?
I'll repeat the second question. The failure to properly log remedial actions brought up by the auditors is somewhat worrying. Just wondering if spot checks since the report have brought up any causes for concern.
I'll pick up on the MASS findings and then Scott will pick up on the remedial action. So what MASS did was audit us against the key big 6 areas. So for fire risk assessment, we reported 100%. At the time when we self-referred, we had a backlog. MASS reported that our figure is 100%. Gas safety, we reported 99.89%, and then MASS reported 99.89%. Where there is a slight variance is on the electrical, where we reported 96.51%, and MASS reported 95.51%. So a slight anomaly of 1%. That would be due to the timing of when they looked into the figure report at a time. So it could have been 1 or 2 days ahead of when we initially reported, but that 1% is within the tolerance of MASS. So that there isn't anything factually from their perspective where it's completely inaccurate. It would just be the reporting time frame. On the remedial action, do you want to just
yeah, so it was about 37%. So I think the first bit was 24%. Could you just?
Yeah, percentage fire remedial actions closed in target was only 24%.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason that we're working with this regulator to catch up on the backlog of actions that were outside of the timescale. So that's part of our ongoing commitment and dialogue with the regulator. And the 37% actions not recorded on the tracker was answered previously. So they are actions that are either duplicates or have already been closed or is already part of a program.
Councillor Mason, is she? Oh, she is there. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot. And the reason I've come tonight is because concerns have been raised by my people in my ward about what we're speaking about fire safety, and a number of people have raised this in a number of different blocks. I hear you in terms of the work that you're doing, and I appreciate that you are checking and doing a lot of work, but part of somebody's right of abode and, you know, feeling at home and feeling okay is that they feel safe. And unfortunately, people don't feel safe in some of the blocks, particularly a group that I mentioned at the last full council meeting, which is people with disabilities who live higher up in those blocks and who don't have a PEEP, which
Sorry,
is...
Councillor Mason, is there a question in there?
Yeah, I'm coming.
You are,
A personal
okay. Sorry
evacuation plan. My question is, first of all, are there plans in place to do personal evacuation plans for all people with disabilities in blocks? I know the government is about to legislate on this, so we know this will happen. And secondly, would you be prepared, Councillor Williams or one of the senior officers, to meet with people in the blocks who are concerned about this, to put them at ease, really? Thank you.
So I think on a general point, certainly after the Grenfell report was issued, a number of residents across the country would be concerned, particularly where they live in high-rise buildings. I think from a housing perspective, we put in place a building safety strategy, which Scott will just talk a bit more around what that means for residents. But I think more broadly, more than happy to come along with yourself and Councillor Williams and talk to residents to elevate any fears or concerns they may have.
That's great. Thank you.
Specifically with regards to PEEPs, that was a recommendation put forward in part one of the Grenfell report. It's also been put forward again. We'd need to wait and see what comes out alongside that. But at the moment, we are writing to all residents. We're engaging with residents in all of our high-rise blocks to establish whether or not they are willing to share with us and let us know if they have any vulnerability or mobility issues. And then we will undertake what's called a person-centric fire risk assessment. That's slightly different to a PEEPs. A PEEPs is a personal emergency evacuation plan, which happens in commercial buildings where there are fire wardens on site during the hours that the building is occupied. Unfortunately, that's really difficult to implement in a residential building where there's no permanent on-site staff, because you need somebody delegated under a PEEP to help that person out of the building. You can't do that in a residential building in a general needs setting. So whilst we'll monitor that and we will obviously comply with whatever regulations come out in future, then at the moment we are doing everything we can to engage with residents in our high-rise blocks and undertake person-centred fire risk assessments.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Can I just ask that you inform us when you're coming into our wards, just so that I can keep in track with people who are raising these concerns?
Yes, we also have building safety managers. Each building safe building.
This is a cabinet meeting, not a dialogue, but yeah, can we just leave that there? Okay, thank you. Okay, resolution. So if there's no more questions, if we can agree the recommendations as set out on page 186, paragraph 3.1. Are we all in agreement there? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, item 9, finance quarter 1 update. If I can ask Councillor Carlin to introduce, please.
Thank you, Leader. This report is the update of where we are at the end of quarter 1, which is April, May, June, reported to us now in September. And the figures in the report are a projection of where we're likely to be at the end should no mitigations be put in place. Now, in Haringey, we are a very ambitious borough delivering for our residents. And in the past year, our children's services were graded good by Ofsted. We received the highest possible rating for SEND. We are well on the way to delivering 3,000 new high-quality council homes and planting thousands of trees. Haringey Learns helps adults obtain the education they need to progress, and Haringey Works, our bespoke employment support service, assists residents into work. We are a borough full of energy and potential. However, we are also a borough where life expectancy dips 8 years from west to east, and where we have wards with the highest levels of deprivation in the whole of the country. there is much to do. But unfortunately, Haringey, like many boroughs, and especially those in outer London, has been underfunded by the government for the last decade and a half, and a fair funding review is long overdue. For historic reasons, Haringey is considered an outer London borough for funding purposes, but has all the pressures of an inner London borough, with the additional burden of lower business rates receipts and an average of band C for council tax. Like other boroughs, Haringey continues to face substantial financial challenges, with ongoing increases in the costs of adults and children's social care, primarily in placements, and the cost of temporary accommodation for homeless households. This Q1 update projects a £20 million overspend by year end. However, as stated before, this is only the Q1 report, and substantial work is being undertaken by officers to reduce this overspend by year end. The housing revenue account continues to show pressure, caused primarily by the high number of void properties and the cost of legal disrepair. There is significant work being done to accelerate our void repairs and work being done on disrepair cases to improve this position. Our ambitious capital programme is under constant review and will be reconsidered in the light of these financial projections to reduce the revenue implications of any additional borrowing. At the moment, we are currently working on our agreed budget for next financial year and on the medium-term financial strategy. And I'm very aware of the impact that the Q1 forecast has on us delivering our agreed corporate delivery plan and on our financial planning process for the MTFS. In light of this, there can be no slippage in the delivery of our agreed savings programme, and I'll be working with colleagues to support officers in keeping these savings on track. In addition, it's imperative that we look across all our spending to ensure every pound counts and all available funding is directed to supporting our priorities and our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlin. Do the Cabinet have any questions on this report? No? Okay. Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. 6.7 mentions a potential requirement to increase the council's bad debt provisions. Is this in relation to a particular area, or is it being noted as a general risk? There's three questions. In regards to housing disrepair cases, a mitigation action explained in the report is the hiring of in-house lawyers to reduce reliance on legal firms. What proportion of disrepair cases result in litigation, and does the council tend to win or lose these cases? Third question is, when it comes to the libraries cut, the saving has been delayed due to the GLA and the general elections. Not anticipating the general election is understandable, but what about the GLA election? That was obviously known quite in advance.
Sorry, could you please repeat question 1?
6.7 mentions a potential requirement to increase the council's bad debt provisions. Is this in relation to a particular area, or is it being noted as a general risk?
I'll ask Taryn to answer that question for you. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. So the bullet points that you're seeing listed in 6.7 are some of the risks that we're facing for the remainder of the year. So in terms of bad debts provision, that's usually an estimate or a figure that we calculate at the year end. The process that we're putting in place this year is to take a view at the end of Q2 rather than leaving it to the end of the year. So it isn't particularly an area that particularly wanted to highlight as part of this bullet point. I think it is just raising, you'll probably recall from Outturn that we did see an increase in our bad debts provision at the year end. So we just want to do some forward planning and highlight that's a risk and relook at that at halfway through the year at Q2. Thanks.
Thank you. With regards to your question about the legal costs of disrepair, It's not really a case of us winning or losing those cases. But the cases come through, and if there's a case, it still has to be managed. However, it is more expensive for us to use outside legal support. And so one of the mitigations is for us to have to right size our in-house legal team to manage those cases.
Do you want to have a follow-up on that, Chair? Can you give general ideas on proportion of disrepair cases? Is it like 1%? Is it very small or?
Well, as I've just said, the disrepair cases are not whether they're won or lost.
Sorry, the actual number. So in terms of the proportion of cases that we have repairs of, how many of those end up in litigation?
I'm just going to ask Jahid to come back on that.
I think that the issue is less about how many cases are litigated, more about the process that we followed in Haringey. So historically, whenever there's been illegal disrepair cases coming through, we've just referred that over to our legal team to deal with. What would ordinarily happen is a repairs team would have a pre-court protocol that minimises the number of cases that are allocated to legal teams internally or externally. So what we've got is we're moving from a legacy position where all of our cases were allocated to solicitors externally to a new model where we'll have pre-court protocols in place and where we have historically allocated external solicitors to act on our behalf. We're bringing those cases back in-house for us to deal with internally. That's far more cost effective to control the costs internally rather than use external solicitors who can be significantly more expensive when compared with in-house resources.
Thank you, Jade. Councillor Mason, I believe you wanted to.
We're missing a question.
Sorry. Oh,
Sorry. The final question that we have on elections is there was obviously some anticipation. We knew that the GLA elections were coming. What we didn't anticipate was that we go straight from the GLA elections straight into general election.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the licensing of private tenants and how that is going to, or not tenants, private sector residents, and how we are going to prepare for the Renters Reform Bill, which I'm sure we all very much welcome. And that obviously will affect people's tenancy agreements as well as compliance and quality. One of the things that I want to particularly ask about is that in Bounds Green, we've experienced a huge increase in the number and the amount of rent people are being asked to pay. I think that's probably borough-wide, but we have one of the highest areas of private sector residences. And so the impact on tenants is probably that landlords will increase rents before this comes in. Have we begun the discussion on that, and how
Councillor Mason, I think we might be digressing a little bit from a finance Q1 update. I don't know if you want to give a sort of brief response, but I think you're kind of going into another territory there, which I'm sure if you wanted to talk to the lead member on, I'm sure we can give you an update. But I don't know if you wanted to respond to some of that, Councillor Williams.
The only sort
but
of
a bit too in depth for
the only
report,
sort
I think.
the most relevant point of the Renters Reform Bill with regards to our council finances will be the ending of no fault evictions.
Yeah,
because that's why we have the huge amount of residents coming to us facing homelessness. Yeah. So that's welcome.
Except that one of the areas that the council is dealing with is the rise in the number of people.
Councillor Mason, this is a really important issue. I don't think anyone in here would disagree. However, on this report, this isn't the place to have a discussion about this. So I'm sure if you put a question to Sarah and the team, I'm sure you can get a response or a discussion, but this isn't on this report. And as a experienced councillor, your questions at the cabinet should be based on the cabinet report. Important issue. I think we all agree on that, but this isn't the time to have that conversation.
I will write to Councillor Williams separately. Thank you.
Thank you for your understanding. Okay, so resolution there's no more questions, is to agree the recommendations as set out on page 32. Are we all in agreement here? Sorry, I can't hear everyone. Agreed. Okay, thank you. Right, so if we move to item 10, which is the corporate delivery plan, which is the performance update Q1, I'm going to do introduction. If there's questions, I believe we have Nathan, Margaret and Jess are here, and also individual cabinet members can pick that up. So I'm just going to do an intro on this. So our corporate delivery plan sets out a highly ambitious agenda for this council, putting into effect our vision for a fairer and greener Haringey. And we will continue to deliver this for our residents despite a challenging context. Councillor Carlin has already laid some of this out, but we are still facing increasing costs, high interest rates, a cost of living and housing crisis, as well as the legacy of local government being underfunded. And despite this, our performance update highlights some really notable achievements, including making good progress on our ambitious targets for building new council homes and investing to deliver retrofit improvements in our existing housing stock. We have increased the number of childcare places available and families take up of their free entitlement to childcare. And we are also improving public realm through additional street lighting and increasing cycle hanger provision across the borough. However, it is also important, whilst we talk about achievements, that we are transparent about where we have not achieved the milestones or timescales we expected to, with an explanation of why this is the case. And this report highlights those areas as well as the positive progress made across all 8 themes. Did you want to add anything, Nathan?
Just to say that this is the first report against the new CDP, so we'll be bringing one now and one in 6 months' time. In future reports, we'll have a direction of travel, but we obviously don't have it in this particular report, and we're reporting by exception only.
Thank you, Nathan. Is there any questions on the delivery plan from any cabinet members? No. Okay. Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. It's surprising that reducing the voids is marked up as RAG rated green. That's page 144, 6.7. But then the finance update states that there is a forecast underachievement in rental income due to worse than expected performance on them. That's on page 47. This feels like a bit like an inconsistency. Just wondering if I can get a response on that. And then there's 2 other questions. One of them is about electric car fleets. Obviously, it states that there's not currently the resources to electrify the council's fleet of cars. However, as and when vehicles need to be replaced ad hoc, in terms of like if there's any issues with the cars, is there a policy to replace those electric vehicles? And the third question is the High Road West housing scheme is RAG rated red due to Lend-Lease's revised strategy, and spending has therefore been delayed, as shown in the finance update. What are the working assumptions on how the scheme will be affected?
Thank you. So I'm going to bring in individual officers to answer some of those questions. In terms of the voids, okay, Councillor Williams, if you can pick that one.
So on the voids, it's a mixed picture, which you've picked up, which is correct, because what we have done is cleared all the backlog, but because of the neighbourhood moves into the new builds, we got an unprecedented amount of voids coming forward as well. So that's why it comes forward as a mixed picture.
Councillor Catty, you were going to come in on the electric car fleets.
Yeah, so this was about decarbonising the council fleet, yeah?
Yeah, whether they would be ad hoc removed. So if one car was past it, would you replace it with an electric vehicle?
So, you know, we're committed to our aim of decarbonising the entire fleet. Obviously, the bringing in Homes for Haringey in-house has brought hundreds of additional fleet in, which actually gave us the opportunity to say, actually, we need to enfold this in the wider EV strategy. So we are at present working on a borough-wide EV strategy for all electric vehicles, including the council fleet.
And Councillor Gordon on High Road West.
Thanks. So yeah, on High Road West, the strategy for that scheme is under review, and I'll just pass over to the director to add any details on.
Yeah, we're working with Lendlease following their announcement on their sort of European strategy and their future in the country, and working out what our next steps are, working through the development agreement with Lendlease, as you would expect us to. So that work is still underway. So we haven't really got to a point where I can sort of give you the full answer.
You, Councillor Mason.
Thank you. I've just got 3 different questions. The first one relates to 6.41 and waste, and a question about the waste strategy and whether it includes people who are in housing association blocks. I'm not sure if it does or doesn't. It's a question because we've got a huge problem with a couple of our blocks in Bounds Green. So it's just straightforward. If it's not, that's fine. But if it does, then I'd like to follow up with an email. Shall I go on to the next question? Yeah. Okay. So under 6.57, we are looking at adults' health and welfare and outcomes. There are 2 issues around this that I'd like to ask a question about. First of all, that you might know it, but we've got a very small park in Bounds Green, where we are building a brilliant new complex with 8 units and etc. But the park is very, very run down, and we've just had to lobby, which we succeeded in the end, to get the playground closed, not because we wanted to, but because it was in such bad disrepair. Can I ask that this park is given some consideration about how we can make this more accessible and amenable to local people in terms of their access to green spaces, because most people live in flats around there. So that's about parks, and also the welcome to a vibrant voluntary and community sector. In Bounds Green, we have a really vibrant food bank, which isn't necessarily what we want, but it works and is great, but we're having to leave the hall that we're in. And so we have got a meeting with Council Adri in the next couple of days, but I just wanted to raise that it's incumbent on being able to use vacant properties that we run these kind of facilities. And my final, and so really it's about, can you bring back to Cabinet the report of that meeting, please? And the next question I've got is again 6.85, which is about a safer Haringey and the data on domestic abuse. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Desnavas. But I just wanted to ask a couple of follow-up questions about that. Number one is I noticed that what we've got is data on domestic abuse offences, but not on sexual violence or rape offences. And it would be really useful to get that in terms of numbers and age groups, because I think that we all recognise that there is a huge problem amongst younger people in relation to the whole Michael Tate and the male influence on them, of his kind of male influence. So please, can we have that? And also, could we have data on what the outcomes of that reporting are? So what we know is the numbers reporting, but not the outcomes. So that would be very helpful. And then I noticed that you're saying that there was 86 new cases who were supported. What happened to the others? Does everybody who reports domestic abuse or sexual abuse get support? And if they don't, why not? Thank you. That's it.
Okay, I'm going to try to get some responses to it. So, Councillor Chanwani, can you come back on the waste strategy question?
Thank you, Councillor Mason, for your questions. We have to, as a council, offer residential waste collection as a statutory requirement, regardless of whether they are in council accommodation, private accommodation, housing association accommodation. I'm aware of 2 cases in Bounds Green where there is problems on the flats. I think one of them is Bailey Close, and the other one's the one by the Ringway near the North Circular. The Collection is something we will do. The organisation of making sure all the waste on site is collectible is up to the managing agent of the block or the housing association, which is where the problem is. My understanding in both cases is that it's not just one housing association that has properties on those sites, and therefore between them they need to find a lead person to take responsibility to make sure that the waste is presented properly. I can, outside of this meeting, make sure that you're updated on the latest progress, but I haven't heard anything in the last few months about it, and I assumed it was sorted out with waste.
Thank you. There is another venue, another place, which is Amethyst Close, but I'll email you. That's fine.
Sorry,
Thank you,
Councillor
Claire.
Arkell, you were going to come in on the parks.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I mean, the park is definitely not closed, and it certainly wasn't on Saturday and Sunday morning when I visited it. There was actually a really lovely birthday celebration that was happening for a toddler there. So it was actually a very pleasant park to be in at that time. There is some work that is going on at the moment with the parks team. When I've got further information and confirmation about when the equipment is going to be updated and what will be going in as refurbishment, I will share that with you as soon as I possibly can.
Apologies, it was the playground I was talking about rather than the park itself. So
Thank you. In terms of the point about food bank, I don't think there was really a question there, and that's not something that would be reported to Cabinet. But I believe you're already meeting with CouncillorOvat, so I think that will continue. And there was a question, Councillor Dasnevs, around sexual violence recording.
Yeah, Chair, I think we'll do a written report, a response just with all the data and information the councillor's asking for, if that's all right.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Okay, so if we can move to the resolution, which is to agree the recommendations as set out on page 134. Do we all agree? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, okay. Geez, we're just checking a point of clarification. So, okay, so if we can move to item 12, which is the revised members agreement and articles of association, Homes for Haringey. So I'll be introducing this report. So along with other boroughs, we're experiencing increasing numbers of households needing assistance with temporary accommodation, and Homes for Haringey is one of the vehicles that allows the council to assist residents. Last year alone, Haringey received more than 4,000 homeless applications. And while we did bring the management of the council homes through the Almo in-house, it still operates as the council's wholly owned company, sourcing private sector leased properties on its behalf. So through this, we reduce pressures on expensive temporary accommodation, and the company leased more than 200 private sector properties, which the council has 100% nomination rights to. So homelessness is something that none of our residents should face, and this helps the council provide quality temporary accommodation to those in the greatest need. And we do have David Joyce and Mark Blowers here if there's any specific questions on this. Are there any questions from the Cabinet on this one? No. Okay, Councillor Emery.
Just the one question for this one. Why has the service for sourcing and leasing private sector properties remained under the ambit of Homes for Haringey rather than being brought in-house with the rest of the service?
Do you want to answer that? Yeah, who to answer that?
David.
David, yeah.
Yeah, so the business case for that was set out at the time that we made the decision at Cabinet, Councillor Emery, which was that we can, through letting the properties through Homes for Haringey, charge the full local housing allowance rather than a percentage of it, which we would be we would only be able to do if we kept it within the council. So there is a good sound financial reason for doing that. Yeah, and yeah, it's Councillor Williams just reminding us it's temporary accommodation that we let those properties as.
Thank you. So if we can move to the resolution on this, which is to agree recommendations as set out on page 209. Are we all in agreement? Okay. If we can move to item 13, which is adopting a new responsive repairs policy. And I know that Councillor Katu joined us late. Do you have a declaration to make?
Yep, Mike, I'd like to declare a personal interest in item 13 in accordance with 6.21 of the Constitution.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Leader. So we are committed to ensuring that our 20,000 tenants, leaseholders and their families live in safe, well-maintained homes where they can thrive. Our new responsive repairs policy is a crucial step in transforming landlord services and aligns with our broader housing strategy of 24-29 and the Housing Improvement Plan. This policy sets clear service standards for Haringey's repair service, outlining what tenants can expect from our repairs and maintenance services, including response times and accountability measures. The development of this policy has been shaped by the insights and experiences of our residents, particularly through the input of the Resident Repairs and Maintenance Continuous Improvement Group. I want to thank this group for their contributions, which ensure that the policy reflects the real needs of our communities and supports our commitment to resident engagement and co-creation in all aspects of housing services. This policy also helps us meet the social housing regulators' standards for safety, quality and accountability, and ensures that our repair service is effective, efficient and provides value for money. I'd also say that key to this policy is the introduction of a new category, and that is an urgent category, which will sit alongside our emergency and priority category. So now an emergency will be responded to within 24 hours, an urgent repair will be responded to within 7 days, and a priority within 28 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Is there any questions for Councillor Williams on this report from the Cabinet? No. Okay, Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. The repairs timescales section includes timescales for how quickly repairs should be attended, but not for how quickly they should be fixed, with set timescales only for those areas in the right to repair legislation. Do you not think this should be made more explicit in this policy? There's 3 questions. One of the issues we often have to deal with as ward councillors is repairs, and how they're quite often done quite poorly and then need to be redone. This isn't mentioned in the policy, but it is something that comes up quite often as local councillors. How will you ensure that the quality of repairs is better going forward? And the third question is the opposition, as previously suggested, a compensation scheme should be put in place with the council paying tenants and leaseholders a set fee for each day a repair is late to better incentivise the council. Was thought given to this?
Didn't actually catch 2, but 1, we obviously have those times that we within the policy. As I've said, the 24-hour, the 7-day, and the priority of 28 days. But obviously, not every repair is very simple, and it might require specialist parts. We have a very complex stock. There might be a garage door that was manufactured some time ago. You couldn't necessarily guarantee a time span, for example, for getting a spare part like that. So our commitment is to obviously to leave things in a state that can be left whilst we await the substantive repair, but it would be impossible to always guarantee some of those supply chain issues. I didn't catch the second question. I'll answer the third. The third was about paying for lack of time. Well, I don't know any other organisation with anybody else. This is just asked for a repair to be done at their home that the contractor would pay for not turning up. I mean, that's just not what we need to do. Is have a good responsive repair service where things are done as efficiently as they can, and that is what we are working towards with the repair service. What was number 2? Neither of us caught number two. Sorry.
Appreciate your honest response on question 3, though. One of the issues we often have to deal with is to do with repairs being done poorly, and then needing to be redone. This isn't mentioned in the policy. Just wondered if you could think about that in terms of the quality of repairs and how they affect things moving forward. So rather than the timescales of response, the timescales of
Yeah. I mean, so we don't want to do poor quality repairs, but we do have an inspection and quality assurance, which Jahed will talk you through.
So just to probably add on 3 points. So in addition to the policy, we also have a repairs handbook that details the very specific type of repair that would be done within each category, whether it's an emergency, urgent, or priority, with regards to improving the quality of works that are being done. So on average, we do about 55,000 repairs a year. What we have committed to do is taking a sample size and doing post-inspection surveys. So the operatives team leader would go out and do a post-inspection of a sample of that operative's repair. In addition, what we also have is a desktop audit that gets carried out by the team leaders. So when operatives attend to carry out a repair, they take a picture of the place of the repair before it's done, and then once after, and their team leader would then do a sample of the audits just to make sure those pictures reflect the right level of quality. So a number of new measures have been put in place to ensure we're getting the repairs quality right first time, but more importantly, to a sufficient standard. I think just on a final point on productivity, one of the things that we've introduced a couple of months ago is a new insight module that gives our team leaders insight into operative level productivity, how many appointments they've attended, where there's consistent non-attendance. It gives us that level of intelligence so we can have targeted conversations with operatives where we notice a particular pattern. So a year and a half on, we've got a lot more rich data to really utilize within the service to ask the right questions to move the service forward.
Thank you, Jahed. Okay, if we can move to the resolution on this, which is to approve recommendations as set out on page 250. Do we all agree? Okay, item 14, approval of the Shaping Tottenham Placemaking document. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Leader. This item is about us seeking approval for a strategic framework for Tottenham, and this is emerged out of the work that we've been doing over the past 12 months, really looking at not only the challenges that we are all too familiar to us in Tottenham, but also looking at the strengths that there are in the community. And it's been an engagement-led process where we've been discussing with different sections of the community, with businesses, with third sector partners, with the voluntary sector, with young people across a broad spread of broad section of different members of our community. And what emerges in this strategy stems from all of those conversations and discussions. And as we brought the strategy together, we've also gone back to those same organisations and people that have participated in forming the strategy to test it out in workshops. In the workshop we held in March of this year, there was 100 participants. So we feel that we have thoroughly tested out what is in this document, and I hope that you can see from the appendices that the engagement summary on page 301 and also the Shaping Tottenham a document from page 319, that you can see a real flavour of how we've developed this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Anna, Emily, I don't know if you wanted to add.
Yeah, just to add, this approach really builds on the Haringey deal and also an earlier piece of work, which is Shaping Wood Green. And it really sets out that approach to partnership in terms of working with our communities and partners. And it's really important in Tottenham because it sets out how over the next decade we'll be able to tackle some of the biggest challenges, but also sees the greatest opportunities across the area for long-term benefit. It's been shaped by direct input from our communities, as Councillor Gordon said, and the approach to delivering on the ambitions that we've set out has been developed alongside the strategy. And I think it's really important to note that it's been designed to be flexible to withstand the economic uncertainty that we all face without compromising on the efforts that we need to deliver positive impact and change on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Anna. Any questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Hagata.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great project. And obviously Hermitage and Gardens is in Tottenham. And I just wondered, in terms of the Haringey deal, what if just for the, I guess for this meeting, just to sort of share some of the highlights of where there's been a real co-production aspect to this. And then the other part of the question is just on delivery. And obviously, as you mentioned, we are in really difficult times and there's a lot of challenges, especially financially. Are there aspects of this where it's aligning with other projects or programs which will enable some of the things that come out in these groups and in these meetings to happen, that are programs that we already have in our pipeline? Thanks.
Thanks for your question. Yeah. What I was going to say is that obviously there's been there was always a danger when we looked at this policy that we thought, well, people maybe if they've been consulted to death, and we wanted to avoid that. And actually what we found when we did go to the community and we searched out to those communities that we thought we hadn't previously got to before, and we sought out specifically young people as well and so on, that actually that wasn't the approach, that they really did want to talk about this. And what we want to set up here is a framework for the next 10 years. So it isn't that we are going to be promising that we'll be delivering something tomorrow, but there will be, there's themes that have emerged out of that consultation, and there is areas, placemaking areas that we are seen as priority, which is not come from us imposing those priorities, but for those priorities coming from the community. So I don't know if that answers your question, but maybe if Anna's got anything to add into specific examples.
So one example is through the Tottenham Voices engagement, we recognised that there were a number of kind of big questions, big challenges for Tottenham that needed to be discussed and needed to be tackled. So we brought together groups of stakeholders, partners from across a whole host of different areas and walks of life. We had VCS partners, the development community, Tottenham Hotspur, different parts of the council, all together in a space to talk about those big issues and those big challenges. So we did sessions on living well in Tottenham, on empowering young people, on tackling crime and antisocial behaviour, and on Tottenham as a destination. And what came out of those did feel like proper co-produced solutions, ideas that we've then kind of built into the strategy to take forward.
And perhaps just to kind of give a flavour or highlight an example, one that really impressed me was working with some of the young people that we'd approached. And so they got an opportunity to make films, to talk about the problems that they'd experienced, but also that the positive aspects of living in Tottenham, and they went out and spoke to their friends and kind of communities around that. So it was trying to think of different ways that people could kind of communicate and develop their ideas to help us shape the outputs that we had.
Thank you. Councillor Emery.
Do you like us to answer the second question?
Oh,
brief around the delivery? Yeah.
Okay. Can we, sorry, can I just say, when we're asking questions, obviously the Cabinet member answers first, and then can we just be clear on who we want to come in and on what question? Because it's been a little bit of confusion, I think. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I'd answer the question. It won't be that we'll be delivering, immediately in the next, days, but it sets up that framework. Sorry, I thought I did say that in my opening remarks. Sorry, yes, I understand what you're getting at now, but obviously we're not sort of stopping those programmes that are in place, especially where they've got funding, which is mostly coming from not within the council, but of outside funding. So those schemes that are funded go ahead, and nothing that stops projects going ahead, and obviously they will just continue and be part of the same process. Did you want to add anything? Or Emily?
Just that the development of this as a strategy has come about through discussions not only with external partners but a number of other colleagues and teams across the council. So where possible, this will kind of help to be the Tottenham focused delivery element of some of those other strategies. So in particular, we've worked with public health around the health and wellbeing strategy, with our economic development colleagues around things like the inclusive economy strategy, opportunity Haringey, and so on. So yes, absolutely, the teams across the council will be aligned, and we've worked to kind of shore that up over the process.
And it also continues our work with existing groups that have been set up. So for example, the Tottenham Hale Liaison Group, there's a number of programmes that are being delivered there, and so it kind of continues that work as well.
Thank you. Councillor Emery, did you?
Two questions, yeah. And if it's all right, do you mind if I stay here, Chair? No, because I think Mary's gone. Question one, how has the reductions in the council's capital and HRA programmes affected the thinking for this project? And will the target outcomes have KPIs attached at some point?
Well, like I say, this is sort of a framework strategy in terms of the setting out the themes that for any future programmes, and out of this we will be working in conjunction with the groups that we've been already talking to develop whatever projects, and yes, they would have KPIs attached to those work streams, and in a similar way that we've done with Shaping Wood Green. I don't know whether Anna wanted to add anything to that.
I think the delivery strategy has particularly been developed to note that flexibility, where there is that reduction in the capital programmes, and in relation to that, it's been really about the council being that enabling factor, working with those groups, etc.
Please do. Okay, right, so before we get to the resolution, I just wanted to take the opportunity. Emily, this is your last meeting, I believe, so just wanted to put on record our thanks on behalf of the whole cabinet for the work you've done well on Shaping Tottenham and other areas, but thank you very much and good luck with your next endeavour. Resolution. So if we can agree the recommendations as set out on page 292 to 293, are we all in agreement? Thank you. Okay, item 15, the Haringey Youth Justice Plan 2024 to 2027. Councillor Over.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Brabazon is unwell this evening, and in her absence, I am pleased to be presenting the Youth Justice Plan for 2024-2027. This is a statutory report to inform members of Cabinet of the priorities within the statutory Youth Justice Plan for 2024-2027, and will also seek approval from full council to implement the plan. This report sets out how the services will be developed, how they will be funded, and how the Youth Justice Service will run over the next 3 years. As is our duty, we have consulted with partners as well as taken this report to Haringey Youth Justice Strategic Partnership Board and scrutiny. I'd like to ask the Cabinet to approve this plan and happy to take questions with the support of officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Over. Is there any questions on the Youth Justice Plan from the Cabinet? No. You're there, Councillor Emery.
Thank you. Table 1 states that 73% of young people said the service couldn't do anything better to help them. Have the responses of the other 27 been taken into account? Are there any specific points made from that? second question, there's three. Some of the targets in Appendix A are big jumps from the performance last year, particularly on the proportion of young people in education and training. Do you believe these targets are achievable in such a short time frame, or are the targets supposed to be more aspirational? And the third question is from the graph on page 389. It looks as though, broadly speaking, Haringey performed better than other nearby members on first-time offenders until the end of 2021. Since then, we've become worse than average. Is there any reason you've pinpointed behind this change?
Thank you, Councillor Emery. I'll hand that over to, as it's performance related, I'll hand it over to the officers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, Councillor. I missed the first question.
Table 1 was talking about 73% of young people saying that the service couldn't do anything better. Just wondering about that other 27%. Were there any specific comments picked up? Anything that's been taken into account with the plan?
Thank you. So in relation to the third of young people who said things could have been better, it was reflected in things like, could meetings take place at a later time, so in the evenings, at locations of their preference, and there was definitely some feedback around, could interventions include an element of inclusive activities such as like playing pool, meeting at a youth club, rather than just a focused one-to-one session. So that was some of the feedback, and we have incorporated that. So we've purchased a pool table. We've made the environment of the Youth Justice Service a bit more welcoming. In terms of the 80% target for entry to employment, it is an ambitious target. I would say it's more, it's not aspirational. I do think it's something we can achieve. We know that the clear area of focus is our post-16 cohort. So when it's for young people under 16, the vast majority do remain in education, employment and training. Post-16, we know the reasons for that have been around sufficient in-borough provision, consideration of risk of young people. So where we've got education providers thinking that these young people are too risky to be in their provision. So we've been working with them to really understand the impact for young people and how we can engage them in those settings. So we also have increased our resource. So we have a full-time dedicated officer focusing on this area of work. So it is ambitious, but I do think, we have every confidence we can achieve it. And in terms of first-time entrants, I think it's right to point out that you can see that there is an increase, but it's a very small cohort. So we're talking about 51 young people, children, and we had an increase of 6 children. So it is a very small cohort, but proportionally, when you compare the rate to other London boroughs, we have seen an increase and we fare off worse. But in terms of the factors that influence in that, it's really contextual factors such as deprivation, income, substance misuse, all areas that we are targeting and commissioning particular services to address those.
Thank you, Jackie. So the resolution is to agree the recommendations as set out on page 353 to 354. Are we all in agreement? If we move to item 16, which is high needs capital funding, SEND resource provision, I'm stepping into Councillor Brabazon's very big shoes here and introducing some very good news for children's services. So the DFE has allocated Haringey an additional grant of 2.07 million. This is in addition to previous capital allocation of 12.4 million for SEND provision, which we approved as a cabinet on the 6th of February of this year, which enabled the council to develop 6 new capital schemes, providing 118 new in-borough SEND places. And this new grant will provide up to 50 additional new education places for children with a range of special educational needs. The grant will also add value to the Safety Valve Capital Programme, which the council commenced in January 2022, and we're making good progress with the expected delivery of 6 new resource provisions in the next 5 years. So I'm delighted that the new resource provision for primary school aged autistic children has opened at Earlsmead School. So this is very good news. I know Councillor Brabazon would have absolutely wanted to be here to introduce this, so I'm sure we'll try and do it some justice tonight. But is there any questions on this report? Said excellent news all round. Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. you have an idea of, 3 questions on this, do you have any idea of when the numbers of SEN children are rising, why they're rising, even though total pupil numbers are falling? Question 2, do you have an idea of why increases are so concentrated in the west of the borough? And then the third question is the SEN inspection in January noted that a short break children's home was expected to be in operation by summer this year. Just wondering if that's been achieved.
Before the officers come in, I also wanted to, I mean, I was hoping for some congratulations there, Councillor Emery, and also our inspection did rate us as equivalent to outstanding. Just wanted to add that before officers come in and answer those very good questions.
Apologies. Trying to have feedback with my officers, it's a bit of a difficult one. I'll note that for sure.
So in terms of increasing numbers of children, we are seeing an increasing number of children with education and healthcare plans, but that is very reflective across the country. And really some of that, the main reason for that is down to better identification. So we are working much more closely with our partners to identify needs at a much earlier stage. I think our approach is that we're trying to focus on providing an early intervention approach at a much earlier stage to prevent the need for an education and healthcare plan in the first place. So it's really down to better identification. In terms of why we think there is a growing number of families in the West, there's always been a higher number of families with SEND in the east of the borough. What we are seeing from our data over the last 2 years, and we're predicting that into the next 3 years, is a growing number in the West. And that's really as a result of transient families, but also more population moves. We're not seeing significant trends that would suggest anything that we need to particularly focus on. But the main thing we are seeing is a rise in autism, social, emotional, mental health. They are the 2 areas of primary need, particularly in the West. Oh, and the short breaks question, I don't know the answer to, so I'll hand over to our director. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. The work to develop the short breaks provision is underway and in development with the 2 units that we've been discussing, and so we'll be able to provide an update at another time, but we're really pleased to let you know that it's underway. Thank you.
Thank you all. We will come back to the recommendations after the consideration of exempt information at item 22 on this. Item 17, which is the contract award for the contractor for the former Moselle school site. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. So yes, this item is asking for approval for the a milestone. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, my computer's just switched off. I beg your pardon. So yeah, we're asking for approval for awarding this contract to build the first new homes in over 50 years on the Broadwater Farm estate, and this is part of the wider programme that we've got on the estate. But these 40 homes are a really important start on the old Moselle school site. It includes 10 3-bedroom properties and 4 4-bedroom properties out of the 40 homes, and includes a retail unit on the ground floor. It's we've been working in closely working with the Broadwater Inclusive Learning Campus to support their already outstanding services for children, and by developing new play area as part of this part of the development. And we've already implemented increased road safety measures which includes 2 zebra crossings and so on. So the details will be in the exempt part of the agenda, but we're asking for approval of the appointment of a contractor to make this historic start on Broadwater Farm.
Okay, is there any questions from the Cabinet on this one? No. Over to you, Councillor Emery.
Thank you. Last one tonight, last 3. Did the termination of the contract with the original contractor in summer 2023 result in a financial loss to the council? Question 2, how was the contractor appointed without a price being agreed? And what steps have been put in place to ensure this doesn't happen again? And thirdly, given that there are only 40 homes in the first phase, how will flats be prioritised amongst those from Tangmere and Northolt who were decanted, which I assume would be more than 40 households?
I think I'll bring the director in to answer those points.
Thank you for those. So picking them up in reverse order. So in terms of prioritisation, we're in the process of contacting all the former residents now. They will be prioritised based on the tenancy start date of their original tenancy at the point of which they moved into their original home. So, and we'll work through that as we contact them and talk to them. Many of them moved off the estate a number of years ago and will be settled. In terms of the price being agreed, I think you're referring to the previous contract that was terminated. So the type of contract that was agreed was a pre-contract services agreement, and that type of contract is a two-stage contract where you agree a price for services for the design to be done, and then you agree the price with the contractor once they've developed the design. It's a form of contracting where you've got a particularly complex scheme, so it's not unusual in the market that you would take that approach, that you wouldn't agree the full price. The original tender did include a target price and that they're evaluated on. But the formal contract is that you work that through the design process. And in terms of financial loss, I think the main loss would have been around time. The previous contractor did develop detailed construction logistics plans, and the designs for this first phase were the designs that the contractor who was appointed developed out in full to REBA Stage 4, which is the point at which you can go to market. So they did do a lot of work that was that the council paid for. And the main loss is the loss of time and the amount of effort that's gone to reprocure those services.
Thank you, David. So we will come back to the recommendations after the consideration of exempt information item 23. And before we get to the agenda, there is another person we're saying goodbye to today. David Joyce, this is your last cabinet meeting. We'll get the opportunity to obviously say a proper goodbye to you towards the end of the week. But again, I just wanted to put on record my thanks on behalf of the cabinet for all the work that you've done for us over the past few years, and good luck. I know you'll keep in touch. But thank you for everything, David. Thank you. Do you want to give him a round of applause? He's acting very shy, so we just had to embarrass him a bit further. Okay, so item 18, which is the minutes of other bodies. So can we note the minutes of the cabinet member sign-ins from pages 503 to 538? 19 significant and delegated actions. Can we please note the delegated decisions taken by directors on pages 539 to 552? There are no, item 20, there are no new items of urgent business. So if we move to item 21, which is the exclusion of the press and public. So we will now be considering items 22 to 23, which do contain exempt information in relation to items 16 and 17. So can I move that the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting, so we can consider the exempt information as defined under paragraphs 3 and 5, part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Do we all agree? Agree. Okay, so we are now formally closing the public